Welcome to Breaking Banks, the #1 global fintech radio show and podcast. I'm Brett King.
And I'm Jason Henricks. Every week since 2013, we explore the personalities, startups, innovators, and industry players driving disruption in financial services.
From incumbents to unicorns, and from cutting-edge technology to the people using it to help create a more innovative, inclusive, and healthy financial future. I'm JP Nichols, and this is Breaking Banks.
Welcome back to Breaking Banks. This time we return to Cape Town, South Africa, where we interview our old friends at TymeBank, see what they've been up to, and they're up to 18 million customers right now. So this is a neobank that may go sort of unrecognized in much of the West, but really is growing incredibly in multiple markets, not only in South Africa, where they have over 10 million customers now, but in Manila and launching in Indonesia. So really interesting to check that out. And also we look at Unitey, a company working with regulators around the world on open banking standards and deploying now in the UAE, a market where obviously I'm spending a lot of time in right now. So let's go back to Cape Town to the Crossfin conference in South Africa and speak to these emerging companies in the space. So a little while back, we had Cohn, who I guess is the executive chairman of TymeBank, which is the largest digital bank in the region now, of course, operating in the Philippines. I learned from earlier today that you guys are at 18 million customers globally now, which makes you a pretty significant player. But I'll let you introduce yourself first.
Sure. Yeah, so I'm Karl Westvig, CEO of TymeBank South Africa, and I also have responsibility for the lending side of the group across the various territories.
So when were you founders? 2014, was it, or a bit earlier than that?
A little bit earlier, so 2011, 2012 was sort of the early stage stuff. But in reality, we only got our bank license in South Africa 2019, so 6 years.
Okay. And you're now in South Africa, the Philippines. Where else are you?
So we're live now with the lending product, the MCA product in Indonesia.
Wow.
Yep. And shortly Hong Kong.
Wow.
That's probably ahead of the curve. But,
wow. Hong Kong.
Yeah.
So you are becoming really global. So why Asian markets instead of expanding your footprint in Africa?
A bunch of things. So firstly, Asia has scale. So Philippines, 120 million people. Indonesia, 280 million people. South Africa is 60 million people. So from a scale perspective is there. It's a young, digitally savvy market, largely underbanked. And we also have very strong partners in the region. So there's a knowledge base already, having based ourselves out of originally Hong Kong and now Singapore. So it's easy access for the senior team.
And, in terms of the tech, is a lot of the tech that you've invested in South Africa, is that transportable to the Philippines and Indonesia, or is it an entirely new tech stack?
So the structure that was set up, so we have our tech engineering team in Vietnam.
Oh, in Vietnam?
Yeah.
Wow.
And that now...
Very cost effective.
It is, and it now numbers 650 people.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, of engineers.
Wow.
So that's our superpower. So the first tech stack that was built for South Africa, 1.0, we effectively launched 2.0 3 years later in Philippines. And we're now actually going through refactoring all of our tech back into one code base.
Wow.
So we will launch a new app in South Africa September, October this year.
And with your Series D, wasn't it? You became a unicorn?
Yeah.
And Nubank was an investor, I understand.
Nubank's an investor.
That's pretty wild.
And actually, they've been phenomenal partners already.
Yeah.
I mean, they've given us access to their C-suite across all their functions. So, how they dealt with operational, organizational structure change, how they dealt with cyber, how they deal with AI, and particularly in the lending space.
Yeah.
So, there's massive amounts we can learn from them.
All right, so let's talk about AI, seeing as you introduced it. What are you guys, where are you using AI today, and where are you investing in AI for the future of TymeBank?
Okay. So at the moment, it's almost on a use case by use case basis. But from a strategic perspective, what we're doing is we're making sure that our tooling across all the territories are identical. So we're standardizing our tooling. We're making sure that all the telemetry data, all the transaction data, everything that we've got, even down to individual functions, departments, is all being captured in data lakes, which makes you then AI ready for anything thereafter, which is very hard for an incumbent bank to do. So that's been set up. So at the moment, it's getting the staff familiar with the tools. We have some operational improvements across customer service, fraud, compliance already. But I think the game change is going to be where we start getting to agentic AI, trained using the knowledge we already have.
So let me ask you how you use AI in your daily routine. How are you getting up to speed with AI so you can remain relevant, leading a team that obviously is integrating it?
So I personally use ChatGPT and on the pro version where I'm generating reports, updating documents, summarizing. But we started internal workshops where we're facilitating at the executive level and at the next level down, workshops where we're teaching people the broader tools. So, how to do podcasts, how to generate copy, how to produce management reports, how to analyze data. I mean, there's so many use cases.
Yeah.
It's fast.
Yeah, absolutely. So you've got some really good expansion coming on, but the one thing that you guys have been sort of quite innovative with is your distribution strategy in terms of how you acquire customers. So you have some physicality here. I noticed Revolut sort of copied that with their card distribution machines and airports and things like that, which you guys sort of pioneered that, right? Are you using that in the Philippines and Indonesia as well, or is there mainly digital acquisition there?
So what we typically find, so yes, we are using physical distribution. So our partner in the Philippines is the Gokongwei family. And through Robinson's Retail, they have 4,000 outlets. We have 500 kiosks that are manned. And it's great for creating, one, a footprint, two, brand presence.
Right.
And
that's the new branch. That's kiosk, right?
Exactly. And it creates a buzz. But what we're seeing already now is the shift. So in South Africa, we were 10% digital onboarding. We're now to 27%, and the plans to get that to 50%. So we definitely, once the brand's established, is shifting more and more to the digital space.
And what was it in the Philippines?
It must be similar. I'd be lying if I told you.
It's interesting. So physical distribution, but it's still digitized phygital, I guess.
Correct.
Right?
We call it phygital.
Phygital. Okay. Yeah. Very cool. In terms of the next generation of AI, we're talking a lot about agentic AI and semantic AI, conversational. You've talked about integration of that. How are you thinking about how a Time customer's experience is going to change on a day-to-day basis with AI?
It's a great question. So I guess a lot of our focus up to now has been on the operating model of the bank. So by training up the functional agentic AIs, we can launch a new territory with 35 people, not 650 people.
Right.
Okay, so that's going to give a step change in terms of cost of acquisition, cost to serve, all those good things. In terms of the user journey, so we already have plumbed in an event platform called MoEngage. And what that does, that grabs telemetry data, transaction data, and we build user journeys for customers. And AI will make sure that what gets delivered to the customer all the time is relevant. So it's going to assist the user journey. It's not necessarily going to reduce the journey. The journey is quite quick already.
So it's a pretty cool journey. When did you join Time?
So I ran a business called Retail Capital.
Oh, and you were acquired.
And we were acquired. So Crossfin were shareholders in us. And we were acquired 2.5 years ago now.
Yeah.
And it was a great acquisition on both sides, for us and for Time at the time. Time had built a transaction and a very strong liability side of the balance sheet. We brought the DNA for lending, per se.
And so how's the lending business growing for Time now? How critical is that?
Significantly. So pre the acquisition, it was 100% liabilities. We now are 40% loan to deposit ratio. We've got an acquisition in the mix right now to acquire part of Sanlam's personal loan book, which takes about 70-80%.
And I'm assuming that all of the lending is done through the app, is it, or?
It's through a web journey or an app journey.
Okay.
Yeah,
so it's 100%
100%
digital.
100% digital.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that's an important point to mention compared with your onboarding for new customers, that when they're onboarded, the new services and
Correct.
the share of wallet is significantly digital.
Correct.
Yeah. And are you guys looking at doing, sort of branching out, apart from credit into things like maybe crypto custody or fractional investment, things like what we've seen with Robinhood or with Gold Money or things like that? What are you thinking of doing in terms of broadening the service layer?
So we're plumbing those in already. So there's probably a stronger drive from the Philippines team right now. So fractional share ownership is important. US dollar accounts, deposit accounts as opposed to Philippine peso. Money transfers. So all of those are being plumbed in as we speak.
The money transfer business is huge for the Philippines.
It is.
Right? Yeah.
It is.
Great. So just to wrap up, what have you guys got planned for later this year? What sort of announcements can we expect to hear from TymeBank?
So the main issue right now is refactoring our platforms. So we will go live September, October with a new journey and a new UI UX for the bank. We are looking at upgrading our brand and putting some marketing dollars behind it. So we'll become a lot more visible in the local market. And with the new tech stack going in, we can also add in new product propositions. So the likes of Apple Pay and all the other stuff, the missing gaps.
Awesome.
To be fully fledged.
Well, thanks for coming and giving us an update. We're very keen fans of Time, seeing you guys progress. It's incredible to see your growth. Please say thanks to Cone for us as well for giving us some of your time. And it's been great. Thanks again.
Thank you.
This show is brought to you by Alloy Labs. As much as we love talking on the show, we believe that action is more valuable than talk. Alloy Labs is the industry leader in helping fearless bankers drive exponential growth through collaboration, exclusive partnerships, and powerful network effects that give them an unfair advantage. Learn more at alloylabs.com. Alloy Labs, banking unbound.
Well, we're back in Cape Town, this time with Unitey. And I guess you're the founder or CEO?
I am,
MK.
yes.
So first of all, tell us a little bit about yourself and about Unitey.
Thank you, Brett. I'm a second-generation entrepreneur who happened to spend more than a decade in corporate life.
Okay.
I worked for a very large French multinational, which was in payments, digital identity, and connectivity services business. Because of my entrepreneurial roots, I got tired after about a decade of being in the corporate straitjacket, and then decided to create this company called Unitey back in 2020, just out of COVID, actually.
Tough time to start a company.
Yeah, I know, but I think it was also one of the reasons, you start thinking differently.
Sure,
right?
sure.
And the opportunity, the digitalization opportunity after COVID was just immense, right? One of the driving factors. So we are a multifaceted payment ecosystem player. We have a payment services license in UAE, issuing and acquiring both, and we're operating that. But our main focus and our main business is designing, building, and operating payment ecosystems for central banks and other governments which are driving payment service utilities, focused on sovereignty of the ecosystem. You know that,
Serenity of the ecosystem.
Yes.
That's a weird term.
Yeah.
What does that mean?
Well, I think we've seen over the last, let's say, decade plus, that geopolitics has made at least retail payment ecosystems an issue where the governments need to look at it
They have been weaponized. There's certainly SWIFT and the card schemes.
I was trying not to use the word weaponized, but thanks, that's exactly right.
But it is.
So it's the weaponization of the payment tech that has actually created the necessity of the government.
It's a big driver why China's implemented SIPs. They don't want to get caught with their own payments rails the payments rails access being shut down. And it's interesting. Russia's gone on to Union Pay now for the same reason.
So this started happening, let's say 10 years ago. And obviously India, China, Brazil were early thinkers. They started addressing the issue very early on. But I think very recently, after the recent war, pretty much every government in the world is relooking at their systems. At the minimum to try and de-risk.
Right.
And at the best possible, be as independent as possible. It's not practically possible to be completely independent if you're working in a global...
We're a US... we're a US-based podcast, but, let's be realistic. The current administration has created some perception of risk when it comes to dollarization and US payments networks and so forth, in terms of how fragile they might actually be if you've got an administration that is... inclined to use those for political purposes. So there's got to be some level of protection in this.
So I'm quite a realist, and in this ecosystem, which is a fantastic ecosystem, was built over 50, 60 years. There's nothing wrong with the ecosystem or with the business.
Except that it was built back in the 60s and 70s when compute power and bandwidth were extremely limited. So, nowadays we have the technology for far more robust payments rails and systems. Right?
Agreed.
We don't need to have separate authentication. We can put identity in the payments transaction chain.
Very true.
Right,
And that change is happening,
right,
and will continue to happen progressively. Technologies will bring in efficiency into the ecosystems. But the reality is that the legacy ecosystem built by these players is still the largest ecosystem in the payments world.
So are you sort of like a bridge between different payment systems, or do you have your own payments rail?
So we specialize in demystifying the card payment rails, trying to make it simpler to implement in a domestic or a regional context. But at the same time, our roadmaps are very clearly focused on creating interoperability between other rails, which are coming up very fast. RTP, real-time payments, right? In this continent, mobile money has been the most successful implementation, and you just can't, leave them out. So the platform actually caters to ensuring there's multiple rails can actually interoperate.
Are you working with Mojaloop here, or?
Mojaloop, no, we're not working with Mojaloop. As I said, our focus and our starting point was the card ecosystem, and there's a lot of work that we are currently engaged with central banks in many countries. And the instant payment rails, that Mojaloop that you're talking about, some countries have built.
It's more for interoperability, but yeah. So, Visa and MasterCard and PayPal just announced their agentic systems, Agent Pay for MasterCard as an example. So I assume that there's a lot of demand and interest for agentic payments right now. Where is your head at, and where's the technology at for democratizing agentic payments?
To be very frank, very early days for us. Very, very early days. We're buried very deeply into trying to solve a problem that has been given to us. And obviously, these technologies are coming up very fast. Obviously, Visa and MasterCard and PayPal, the likes of them, have the ability to actually put it out there quite fast.
Sure.
We will benefit from it,
of course,
right?
Yeah.
But we're doing a catch-up game on that.
Okay.
That's the reality.
So, You talked about central banks as customers. You're based in the UAE.
Yeah.
Who else are using your platforms, for integration and so forth?
Primarily central banks or their nominated payment service utilities, right?
Yes,
because different countries have different models. There is more of a trend of central banks actually stepping in and taking controls. We saw what happened in Turkey with the BKM. Here in South Africa, the Reserve Bank has actually taken 50% stake in BankServe very recently. The UAE Central Bank has created its wholly owned subsidiary, and so on and so forth. But in many other countries, you still have a model whereby commercial banks are running a payment services utility, and they are also a customer.
Yeah, in full disclosure, I'm actually on the advisory board for NEBRAS, which is the Open Finance Initiative for the Central Bank in UAE. Obviously, you mentioned the real-time rails. And if we're talking about AI-based payment, it's going to be real-time. But we also have now this big stablecoin movement. So I know from a card scheme perspective, Visa and MasterCard are both fairly agnostic into that, and they're probably going to plug in, stable coins at some point. They're experimenting with this right now. But as we start getting more and more flavors of real-time payments rails and more flexibility, and we are starting to build more and more autonomous infrastructure in this. I can imagine a time in the future that let's say you're traveling and you've got your AI-based wallet and you go into a new market or economy where you haven't been before, that you won't have to worry about what the payment rails at the back end are, that your wallet will be smart enough to choose in real time the right rails for the right transaction at this point in time. How close are we from that sort of system where you could switch out and choose different payment rails for different sort of use cases in real time?
Can I be honest?
Yeah.
Complicated, because
that's what AI is for, though.
Yeah, it's because I think regulation and regulators are trying to understand how to actually let this technology be used, especially when cross-border money movement is a complicated topic, right? And this is where regulators weigh in. I know that there is regulation.
But they are thinking about it, right?
Of course. They're thinking about it. They're actually acting on it as well, right? So we see some stuff happening in the US around the regulation around stable coins. I've seen it in UAE as well. But it's early days because they're figuring out what is the best model, right? And within stable coins, the technology obviously is great. It's a no-brainer, right?
Sure.
And very, very cost-effective, future-proof, wonderful. However, the application of stablecoin right now has multiple flavors as well, right?
Sure. USDT, USDC, CBDCs.
Private issued, bank issued, CBDCs, as you said, plus, fiat-based or otherwise, right? So what I've seen, let's say, in UAE, particularly, as you know, there are a couple of initiatives. One of them is a very large consortium, which was very recently announced between IHC Fab, which is the largest bank, and ADQ. And they intend to launch their own stable coin very, very, very soon. Whether it will become mainstream, mass, in near future, I'm not very sure.
All right. Well, MK, it's been great to have you on the show. If there's a central bank or large networks out there looking to modernize their rails and look at better integration from a regulatory perspective, how can they get in touch with you guys?
Unitey.com. UNITEY.com.
UNITEY.
TEY.
TEY.
Y.com, right?
As opposed to unity.com without the E, which is the gaming platform. So UNITEY.
Y.com.
MK, thanks for joining us on Breaking Banks today.
Thank you, Brett. Thanks a lot.
All right, guys, that wraps up our exploration into some great startups out on the African continent and beyond with our partners Crossfin that supported us this week on the podcast. So that's it for Breaking Banks this week. We will see you guys next week. That's it for another week of the world's #1 fintech podcast and radio show, Breaking Banks. This episode was produced by our US-based production team, including producer Elizabeth Severance, audio engineer Kevin Hersham, with social media support from Sylvie Johnson. If you like this episode, don't forget to tweet it out or post it on your favorite social media, or leave us a 5-star review on iTunes, Google Podcasts, Facebook, or wherever it is that you listen to our show. Those actions help other people find our podcast, and in return, that helps us build an audience that can be supported by sponsorship, so we can continue to provide you with our award-winning content every week. Thanks again for joining us. We'll see you on Breaking Banks next week.